Right, you've asked for it. So today I'm going to review, or compare rather, the AirPods Max versus the Bowers Wilkins Px8. There are definitely more budget noise-cancelling headphones on the market compared to what you'd call premium, but the AirPods Max have always sat in that latter category. That's because of their price, their build quality, and let's be honest, because they're made by Apple. But how do they compare against a brand who really know what they're doing at this level? These are the Px8, they're the latest flagship headphones from Bowers Wilkins. No, they're not the 007 version, and they're not the recently released and gorgeous looking McLaren version. I want to know how these stack up against these. So if you've got the budget to spend on headphones like these, where should you put your money? Equally, if you're just curious to see what you get when you spend over £500 on a pair of consumer headphones, I think you'll find this interesting. Let's rattle through the pricing and the specs. Firstly, pricing, $549,599. Battery life, 20 hours, 30 hours. Battery charging method, Lightning, USB-C. Charging time, from these you get 1.5 hours from a 5-minute charge, and on these you get 7 hours from a 15-minute charge. Weight, 386 grams, 320 grams. Connectivity, Bluetooth 5, Bluetooth 5.2. Speaker driver, in these it's an Apple dynamic driver, and in these, I need to refer to this, it's a dynamic full range carbon driver. Mics, well, you get 8 mics for active noise cancelling on these and 3 for phone calls. On these you get 4 for active noise cancelling and 2 for phone calls. With these you get a USB-C to Lightning charging cable and the smart case. With these you get a hard case, a USB-C to USB-C charging cable that can also be used for audio, and also a USB-C to 3.5mm audio cable. We'll go straight into sound, and I'll put these on my neck because it's hard carrying 2 pairs of headphones all the time. Basically, when I do sound tests with headphones, there's a couple of things to bear in mind. The first thing is that I do it completely out of the box. I don't do any kind of EQ or any kind of treatment whatsoever. I just leave them as the manufacturer intended. And secondly, I normally use my iPhone as the source of the music. Again, I need to keep these tests consistent. And lastly, please remember that sound is incredibly subjective. Well, I'll just get straight to the chase. The Px8s sound better than the AirPods Max. The first thing you notice straight away is that the AirPods Max are much brighter, and not in a good way. It's almost too harsh really compared to the Px8s. There's loads of top end going on these, and it's just a little bit tiring after a while. Whereas the Px8, as I mentioned in my original review, have this lovely big, warm, rounded sound. A great example of this was on my headphone killer track, Breathe Again by Pop Evil. If you haven't heard that, check it out. Basically, it's a song with loads of stuff going on. Loads of guitars, drums, lots of compression, and a bad pair of headphones will make an absolute meal of it. Now, the AirPods Max don't sound terrible with that song, but they do lack that roundedness. The top end's just a bit too much, and it makes the entire track sound muddy and a bit of a mess. Whereas the Px8s deal with it really well. It sounds big, full, powerful, just as I would guess Pop Evil intended. But one of the most fascinating comparisons I did was with Dolby Atmos. Now remember, Dolby Atmos only works on the AirPods Max, it doesn't work on the Px8s. So when I played Never Really Over by Katy Perry, which is mixed in Dolby Atmos, I heard a very different version of it on these compared to these. And again, cutting to the chase, it just sounded so much better on the Px8s. It sounded bigger, wider, louder, which is just weird when you consider that Dolby Atmos is meant to give you this massive soundstage. But on the AirPods Max it sounded muddy, narrow, and it lost all of its dynamic range. Whereas on the Px8s it sounded fantastic, the soundstage was absolutely huge, all of the dynamic range was there, and it didn't sound muddy like it did on these. But switching back to normal, non-Dolby Atmos music, it's the same story with pretty much any track you try between these two headphones. The Px8s just sound warmer, bigger, fuller, and more importantly, because they don't have that really harsh top end that the AirPods Max have, they don't fatigue, they don't get tiring after a while. In the past, I've sung the praises of the AirPods Max, but now I've experienced proper premium headphones. These don't sound very good. It's also worth noting that you can connect these to your laptop via that USB-C to USB-C cable that comes in the box, and that gives you access to 24-bit high-resolution streaming with a compatible audio service, obviously, but you can't do that with the AirPods Max. This is limited to Apple Apple's AAC codec, which isn't bad, but it pales in comparison to the number of codecs that you can get with these. So when it comes to sound, the Px8s are a clear winner, and I'm sorry, Dolby Atmos for music, on headphones at least, is an utter waste of time. As I've said recently, if you spend over £250, let's say £300 on a pair of noise cancelling headphones, the noise cancelling itself is generally very good. Neither of these headphones disappoint in that regard. So noise cancelling, fine. The big difference is transparency mode. And transparency mode is when you let the outside world in so you can be aware of your surroundings. As always, the AirPods Max smash the competition. And although the Px8s aren't bad when it comes to transparency mode, they're not a patch on the AirPods Max. And this really makes its presence felt during telephone calls. Now, I don't use headphones like these for telephone calls, but whenever I do, if I have to do it in a pinch, I will always go with the AirPods Max. And the reason for that is that transparency mode. You can just hear yourself much better on these. The Px8s are good for taking telephone calls, but if that is a massive consideration for you, and if you really, really need very good transparency mode for whatever reason, then the AirPods Max can't be beaten yet. Moving on to design, and again, a bit like sound, it is a very subjective thing. The first thing to bear in mind is that the AirPods Max are much heavier than the Px8s. They feel heavier on your head, they're heavier to hold as well. These are a much more convenient pair of headphones when it comes to wearing them for long periods of time. They also feature a much smaller design, again, subjective, etc., but these don't look quite as overbearing as these. Some of you might like this design from Apple, and some of you might prefer the more refined design from Bowers Wilkins. And when it comes to build quality, they both feel fantastic. The AirPods Max just pip it, mainly because Apple has their kind of traditional no frills, very simple, but very, very well thought out design. There's lots of aluminium going on here. There's a bit of aluminium on these as well, but there's more aluminium on the AirPods Max. But I do think they both look and feel very premium, and they do justify their price tag when it comes to that side of things. Next, we need to talk about the case, and you probably know where this is going, but regardless, this is the Px8 case. It's quite big, and that's because, like so many new headphones these days, the Px8s don't fold up properly. They just kind of twist around, and as a result, you get a massive case. But having said that, it's still fairly thin, and most importantly of all, it's nice and tough. And inside, you get this fantastic flap, which is magnetized, and you can put all your cables and stuff in. It's just a big but fantastically designed and very premium feeling case. Now, the AirPods Max, they don't come with a case. Even though Apple calls this their smart case, it's neither smart nor a case. It's this, which has been laughed at, it's been thrown around by me constantly, and it deserves all of that stuff. It's made of this horrible material as well, which scuffs really easily and looks horrible. But anyway, you put the headphones in there and it doesn't protect them. And that means when you buy the AirPods Max, you'll probably need to buy a case as well, which raises the overall cost of them and probably puts them in the same ballpark as the Px8s. So there's no competition. This is a stupid idea by Apple. I don't know why they did it. I'm going to throw it again because you seem to like it. The next thing is the battery, and it's bad news for the AirPods Max again. And it's nothing to do with the battery life itself. I've always said over 20 hours is absolutely fine, so there's no problem there, although you do get an extra 10 hours from the Px8s. But there are two issues with the AirPods Max which I cannot avoid when it comes to the battery side of things. The first thing is that you can't turn them off. There's no switch to turn off the AirPods Max. Like I mentioned a moment ago, you put them into that stupid case and they go into a low power mode, but they never completely turn themselves off. And the problem with that is that they run out of battery when left unattended for a certain amount of time. But the other headphones I have in this studio, and there are lots of them, can all be turned off. And because of that, they last forever. The next issue is the charging method. So the AirPods Max are charged via Lightning, which is Apple's proprietary port. The Px8s are charged via USB-C. Now, I know that you get a Lightning cable, obviously, with the AirPods Max for charging, and obviously lots of people have lots of Lightning cables because they have iPhones, but every other pair of headphones on the market these days, including the Px8s, use USB-C for charging. AirPods Max should have USB-C charging like every other pair of headphones on the market, and you should be able to turn them off. They are the only pair of headphones in this studio that I have to constantly charge. And once again, because of that case and the charging method, the Px8s, like pretty much every other pair of headphones I've pitched against the AirPods Max, are a nicer, more convenient pair of headphones to live with. If you're comparing these two pairs of headphones, I'd find yourself that extra £50 and buy yourself the Px8s. The sound, the convenience, the slightly better design and comfort, and just the overall ownership experience makes that £50 more than worth it. These are a fantastic premium pair of headphones, and they do show the AirPods Max how you do it. The only reason you'd go for the AirPods Max over the Px8s is if you really want all of the Apple ecosystem stuff. And that includes things like Dolby Atmos, which I know I rubbished earlier, but if you like that, you can only get that with these. Also spatial audio, which is fantastic, and also all of the clever device switching stuff and automatic pairing that you get with the AirPods Max and things like the iPhone, the Mac, the Apple TV, etc. You don't get that with these. But if you strip that stuff back and just look at these purely as a pair of premium noise cancelling headphones, there's no competition. The Px8s absolutely smash the AirPods Max. If you've still got some time and you want to see me dig more deeply into the Bowers Wilkins Px8s, keep watching for a link to that full review.